Harihi Om Sadashivasamarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langayate Girim Yadkrupatamaham Vande Paramananda Madhavam. ओम शिष्य आत्म समर्पण कार्पण्य दोषो उपहत स्वभावः पृच्छामि त्वां धर्म सम्मूढ चेताः यश्रेयस्यान्निश्चितं ब्रूहि तन्मे शिष्यस्तेऽहं शाधि मां त्वां प्रपन्नम् ओम. And we are in the chapter 2 of Bhagavad Gita, Shloka number 57. The Shloka goes like this. Yas sarvatranabhisneha tattat prapya shubhashubham nabhinandati nadveshti tasya prajña pratishtitha. So here he continues the journey of explaining about who Sthitapragya is. As we started, we have about 16 of such characteristics that have been mentioned from Shloka number 55 to 72. And in this Shloka, we will see 3 of them. The first is Yaha Anabhisneha Sarvatra. Then Tattat Prapya Shubha Shubham. Then Na Abhinandati Na Dveshti. These are all the 3 aspects which are covered in this shloka. Yaha, one who, sarvatra, everywhere, anabhisneha. Anabhisneha means without a excessive or extreme attachment, right? So that affection or anything which becomes very compulsive in yourself, that kind of a thing he will come out of. Then tat prapya. Tat, from that, contextually, in an unconditional manner, unconditionally from all associations. Prapya, deriving or receiving. The context in this will become accepting. Shubham and Ashubham, good experiences as well as the bad experiences. Na abhinandati, neither abhinandati is extremely rejoices. Na dveshti, nor rejects, gets upset or angry. Tasya prajña, for him the prajña, the intellect, pratishtitha, is considered to be well established, is fixed. So this is the way that Bhagavan is continuing from the previous shloka. Let us do the analysis here. In this shloka, it is further emphasizing the same thing that was told in the previous shloka. In shloka number 56, Bhagavan has said, Anudvigna manaha. Here he says, Nadveshti. Anudvigna manaha means following it, he doesn't get disturbed, or there is nothing that kind of comes in the way as a vigna in the manaha. In 56, he said, Vigata Sprihaha. Here he says, Sarvatra Anabhisneha. Vigata is without the Spriha, without that particular attachment. Here there is no too much of Sneham, which is being affiliated or being close to, that kind of a expression. And he also says, Na abhinandati. That is, Anand is not again overjoys. And then there he had used the term Dukkeshu and Sukheshu. Here he says Shubham and Ashubham. Tattat Prapya is a very important thing here. Tattat Prapya, this refers to a very important quality. Here the emphasis is he will not be going in search of an experience. He will not drive towards. In other words, the purpose of his engagement will not be towards a specific experience. Experience is that which comes to us. The term Tattat Prapya emphasizes that one I do not resist that which comes to me. The other one is I don't seek a specific experience. And this both are from maturity. When we have realized that this object is not giving me the pleasure or that experience, when I realize that, that is when you overcome it. The best example that I generally give is I like gulab jamun, but is it giving me the same pleasure at all times? No. On some days I like it, on some days I will say I will eat later. So it is not giving me the same pleasure at all times. Any experience you take, it may feel like, wow, that experience or that particular moment will give you an immense pleasure because it has given you an immense pleasure. But if it is again experienced, you may not really have that pleasure. Sometimes it may even be painful. So it is not the object which is giving me the pleasure. So there is no point in seeking the pleasure or seeking the experience and approaching the concept or putting an action towards it. The other thing is resisting. If in case I want to prevent something from happening, that is also not something that goes away, because that experience is not going to be the cause of, or that situation, that object is not going to be the cause of my experience. My experience is independent of what the objects that I experience. When that realization comes, these two becomes a natural outcome. So Tattat Prapya is seen as a very, very key message in this particular shloka. Then he says, Na abhinandati na dveshti. When experiences are encountered, expression of happiness or sorrow is very natural. Right? If something sad happens or situation is putting me into a sad state, it is very natural for me to have that particular sorrow. Does it create a response from me? Does it stimulate a response from me in terms of it prevents me from doing the next thing that I am supposed to do, etc.? No, it will not. That is the quality that Bhagavan is speaking of. So the core to Sthitapragya Lakshan is experience is the same like anyone else. I will also have good and bad experiences. However, response is going to be, the outcome in me is going to be the same. That is what is the meaning here. That outcome is not going to stimulate some other kind of a resistance in me. It is just going to be an experience that comes and goes. Now, given the kind of repetition, it is said that one who observes and analyzes at this level of inquiry and beyond is the most successful one in Vedantic inquiries. For example, when you look at the previous shloka and this shloka, and you understand that, hey, this seems to be a repetition. Is it punarukti dosha? When you inquire into that, this is considered to be a very good aspect of an advancement in your approach to a Vedantic life. It is considered to be a punarukti dosha only when it adds no new pramana. Here, each verse removes a different layer of ignorance. So, punarukti na apitu vishadikaranam. Non-repetition, but progressive clarification. When that thing happens, it is not a punarukti. In shloka number 2.56, the inner psychological state, kimasita vrajeta kim, right? That aspect is the one that is addressed. In 257, it describes the outer or the behavioral expression. Asita is the inner and vrajeta is the outer. So he is answering from both the point of views. We can further see the subtlety with the qualifier. Sukham and dukkham is an internal aspect. Shubham and ashubham is a situational aspect, which is outward, external aspect. Whereas sukham and dukkham are internal. When we pay this kind of a close attention, okay, Why is it that it is a repetition? Actually, it is not a repetition, because in that one, Bhagavan had emphasized on Sukham and Dukkham, which is my internal experiences. And here, Shubham and Ashubham, they are external experiences. So he is kind of creating a difference between a subjective aspect and the objective aspect. Bringing this clarity is important to understanding the Sthitapragya. When for you to become a Sthitapragya also, it is very important that you realize the difference between the two, the internal positioning and the external influence. When you get this in place, you get the state of a Sthitapragya. So this repetition is very essential, and hence it is not a punarukti. In fact, it is very, very important that Bhagavan says it. So it is not just punarukti, or it is not just an emphasis, but it is an essential part of defining the Sthitapragya Lakshan. And that is the way the darshanas, when they speak about it, when they analyze it, they look at these two shlokas. When does Shastra promote a punarukti? Right? There are three reasons that is said to be a good reason for repeating. In our class also, there are many things that you would have seen that these are repeated. Focus, some examples, they may be told again and again. The reason is one of these three. If it is not, then it is a dosham in the way that I have communicated. Well, I can have the dosham, not a problem. But in Shastra, and that too from these kind of Pandit, which are the ones whom we seek a guidance from, we don't see that punarukti happens at all. The first one is karanam, to establish, firmly establish the point. Then samshaya nivritti, removal of doubt. When there is a scope of a possible doubt arising in the future, for analysis and to provide further clarity, a repetition is considered to be good. It will not be called as a punarukti dosha, rather it is an important element. Then the third one that is said is viparita bhavana nashaha. Basically, to prevent a wrong understanding of the concept. The concepts that we are talking about is pretty subtle. So it is always a possibility that the wrong understanding, or we may start leaning towards the wrong things, that viparita bhavana can be destroyed when we do this punarukti, or when we do this repetition. In that case, it is not considered to be a punarukti. Shankaracharya very beautifully expresses this. 256 may still be achievable through vivekam and vairagyam, which is a discipline. 257 reflects something higher, atma jnana janita samatvam. Through the realization of the self, this will be born in you. And because of this difference, it is very important that they are emphasized, and Bhagavan does so, and that too in a consecutive shlokas. So why does Krishna move from spruha, sneha, and raga in these verses? Let us examine this. He is describing the exact mechanism by which bondage is manufactured, is created inside the human mind. Why the movement from spruha to sneha to raga? Bhagavan very beautifully clarifies that bondage does not begin with an attachment. It begins with a mental lean, the unknown spread that happens in our heart towards the object of experience. The object of experience is not the culprit. It is that leaning towards that object of experience, the balance getting lost, is the important feature or aspect that Bhagavan is bringing a clarification to. The stage one is a subtle want. There is a faint longing, a psychological reaching. It is not an obsession, or it is not an attachment. Wow, this is so cute kind of a experience. It is nice to have a very innocent learning about that object. That is ideal for this spriha. When this happens, you can still walk away. You identify and association is not established in you. The second one is sneha, something that begins to stick. Here, the sneha represents, viscosity, an oily kind of a thing where it kind of starts sticking onto you, spreading into my thing, my recognition, my role, etc. This is called the mind investing in identity with that experience. This is where the antakarana, called as ahankara, sprouts to create the attachment in your mind, in your manaha, in your buddhi. Now, the dissociation begins to hurt, and hence Bhagavan says, sarvatra anabhisneha. The third one is ragaha, which is a compulsive attachment. Now, what has happened is it has matured from liking to dependence. This leads to the state where mind firmly believes that without this, I am not full, I am diminished, I am empty. The effect is freedom is gone, because now I have become dependent on that which I have just liked. The clarity is gone. The choice is gone. I must get it. This results in bhayam and krodham, because the fear of loss, what will happen if in case I lose it? Or krodham, how is it that this has come to me? This will spring into you when you are in this stage 3. Hence, the choice of words that Bhagavan uses are Vita Raga Bhaya Krodha. The next step that leads to samsara, which is the bondage, or mohaha and bandhaha. Now, Yoga Sutra, Buddhism, etc., focuses on breaking this attachment. Their arrows are aimed at stage 3. Bhagavan, being Bhagavan, he goes to the root, the spriha. That is the awareness that Bhagavan brings when he is clarifying about the Sthitapragya Lakshan. Right, so we need to understand that it starts with spriha. If in case we overcome that spriha, the stage 2, stage 3 will not even happen. And it is easy to overcome at the stage 1. As soon as we realize that this particular thing, nice to have kind of a feeling is happening, we have to start laughing at ourselves. See, you have slipped. And that is enough. And that will take care of preventing you from slipping into the stage 2 and stage 3. So a very important aspect, if you remember, when I started the introduction about this side, this entire Bhagavad Gita, these 2 shlokas are something very, I feel something elated whenever I speak about these 2 shlokas. These are the most beautiful shlokas, I would say. Of course, I will say the same thing for several other things, but this one is something that always, stands out whenever I think of Bhagavad Gita. And the reason is because of this. Look at the subtlety with which Bhagavan has approached this subject, and the analysis that leads us, from Acharya's feet is what we are getting all this. That kind of a in-depth analysis and the insight is so enlightening in nature. The key lesson for us is attachment is not born when you cling, as in when you experience holding on to things. Attachment is born when you lean, at the time when the indriyas come in contact with the object of interest, and there is a sense of holding or sense of liking that develops into you. See this section of Bhagavad Gita as Bhagavan giving us a self-diagnostic tool, where I am in the ladder with respect to that which I identify. Where is it that I am? Is it spriha, sneha, or ragaha? No, liberation or moksha does not mean not having and expressing love, not engaging in worldly or spiritual affairs, or isolating oneself, or developing, growing a beard, and, nothing like that. It is not like I don't care for anything around me. Instead, moksha means being inwardly unentangled, right? Like being a space. It is there everywhere. It is with everything, but it doesn't mix into anything. It gives the space for others to move around, but it will not be changing itself. And this is an important leadership quality as well, containing everything but attached to nothing. Look at the word, containing everything. As a leader, for example, the containment is very, very essential. You are going to be part of that entire containment of your organization, but not attached to anything, be it action, be it objective, or be it the people or the skill around it. Neither subtle nor physical. We are not getting attached to that. On the other hand, we are going to be looking forward. Even subtler objects, attaching it to like an illusion. The mithya, when we are trying to describe that, we get into that illusion aspect. An expression that is coming out of you, which is like your team and other thing, are expressions coming out of you, but they are not attached into you. The mirage, you see the water is there in the desert, but the desert is not attached to that water. That is the relationship that you develop with your own organization. That gives you ability to be balanced. Pot says, I hold so much of space in me. Overcoming this ignorance is jnanam and moksha. The space is there everywhere. Don't become a pot, become the space, is the basic knowledge that we share at this point. Proceeding to the Bhashyam, in this place, Shankaracharya says, the sage who is free from attachment in all the things, which is sarvatra anabhisneha, even in relation to his body and life, and who, upon encountering both good and bad circumstances, does not rejoice in the good, nor does he hate or resist the bad. Such a person is free from emotional swings like elation and depression. This inner stability, the true freedom from emotional turbulence, becomes the firm ground for higher wisdom. That is the prajna, the wisdom born out of self-discrimination. So he uses viveka jaha, born out of vivekam. So the key lessons are free from attachment to anything, everybody and every life, unshaken by successes and failures, pleasures or pain. So basically neither overjoyed by good fortune nor dejected or hateful in misfortune. And because of this inner steadiness, his wisdom becomes firmly rooted. This is the psychological state of true liberation, a state of freedom from dependence on circumstances for happiness. Right. So that this is the, these are all the basic seed which leads us to analyze and get to this much of beautiful definitions on these shlokas. At this place, Acharya proceeds to shloka number 58. The 58th shloka goes like this. Yada samharate chayam कूर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता. On the surface of it, it is like giving a small example, but there is a lot of subtlety involved in this. Iva yada, in the manner by which. The example, which is kurma samharate angani. This becomes the 9th value. Going into the word by word, yada, when, samharate, withdraws, cha ayam, cha is also or and, ayam, he, kurmonganiva, kurmaha angani iva. Kurmaha is tortoise, angani is the way, the limbs of the tortoise, iva, like, sarvashaha, altogether, indriyani indriyartebhyah, indriyani, the plural form, the sensory organs. indriya artha, the object of interest, like sound for the ears, and light for the eyes, and so on, taste for the tongue, etc. Tasya prajna pratisthita. Tasya, his prajna, the intellect, is considered to be fixed. What does the tortoise do? When it senses a danger, it immediately withdraws. It puts itself into the shell. That's the similar way when the experiences between indriyas and indriya artha comes into being, he withdraws his emotional aspect towards them. That is the way that we can put it in simple way. This is just an example, but let us go into the analysis. There are some schools which consider the shlokas from 2.55 to 2.57 as Sthitapragya Lakshan, and from this shloka, which is 2.58 to 68, as an upayam, the means to attain moksha. They speak of the kramam, that is a step-by-step order. First, they say that it is karma yogam for chitta shuddhi, shravanam and mananam, jnana praptihi, jnana nishtha, and moksha. So, basic qualifiers of nididhyasanam are considered to be shamam and dhamam, which is 58 to 61. The shlokas are seen with respect to dhamam, the first quality that you want to develop into yourself. Because controlling the mind or getting in a good control over your mind is much more difficult than the control over the indriyas. And that control over the indriyas is something that is the first one that is being spoken about. This aspect is considered to be developing a control over the indriyas. So it is an exercise for you to develop into being or into becoming a sthitaprajña, and the first quality is dhammam. That is the way some of the schools speak about. This is reflected by those traditions on the shloka as one in the path of becoming a jnani, the mumukshu, is equated to a turtle. The indriyas are equated to the four legs and head. That is what the five indriyas we have got, and the turtle also has the four legs and one head which it withdraws. Indriya arthebhyah, the enemies of turtle. The similar example. That which affects the mind are the only objects towards which the mumukshu withdraws. Other than that, he will continue his natural life everywhere. Whenever he experiences that particular interest coming towards that, at that time he withdraws. And that is what we need to consciously practice. It's a beautiful lesson. It's a beautiful value. It is not being said as it is wrong. I'm just saying that this is the emphasis for this shloka that those schools give. The argument is the word yada, when. This is translated into an effort. When this effort of withdrawing the sense organs is performed, his prajna will get established, is the way that they interpret this shloka. If the term when is used in the context of only when one withdraws the senses, tasya means his prajna is well established. This interpretation leads us to Sthitapragya Lakshan, as in it is a continuation of the answer with the same spirit. Both are correct, right? So, but the way that we have been learning is the latter one, wherein when such and such happens, then he is a Sthitaprajña. Because of the question that Arjuna has asked, and Bhagavan is giving an answer to the question. So to say that he has given the answer through Sthitapragya Lakshan and now he is telling the means, the division seems to be a little off from the core concept of the flow of these shlokas. So we say it is when, and we have already qualified, when we started itself, we said that which is the definition of a jnani is an exercise for us. So it is an exercise for us. But from the shloka's point of view, we try to emphasize that we should not use the word as an effort, the when getting translated into an effort, but rather leave the when, yada, as yada itself, and associate it with the definition of Sthitapragya Lakshan. We see it as a flowing prakarana, as in the Upadesham is unfolding. We see it with continuity. The argument is logical. The example expresses a voluntary withdrawal. If a Sthita Prajna is already Pratishthit, then why a voluntary withdrawal? That becomes the question. The progression is seen like this. Establishes an inner fullness. Right? Prajahati yada kaman sarvan parthamanogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha is the way that he spoke in 55th shloka. In the 56th, it is establishing an emotional freedom. Dukkeshu, sukheshu, vitaraga bhaya krodha, etc. Then the 57th, it is non-stickiness towards outcomes. Sarvatra anabhisneha. The 58 is here Bhagavan speaks of mastery over sense movement. Kurmonganiva. So we see it as a step-by-step way that he is coming, like what we say is a top-down approach. That is what we see it in this particular flow of these shlokas. Bhagavan, by bringing specificity, is tightening the definition of Sthitapragya. It is absolutely in line with the question being posed. So he is strictly following with what he is supposed to express to someone who has asked this question, is the way that we put it. The word of disagreement is yada, yada samharate. When he withdraws, kurmonganiva establishes the influence. We see this conditional statement as reflective of the quality of prajna. The prajna is truly prakashakam, is, that is what is a prajna, right? It is alert and immediately catches the possibility of a spriha. This makes him withdraw his senses. So you are able to understand the flow, right? The prajna, when it is fully prakasham, only then you will be able to realize the spriha in you. Otherwise, you will just get carried away with that spriha. Wow, so cute. And then continue that emotion into you. A prajna, when it is fully in its awareness, will notice that it is getting attracted. So kurmonganiva becomes essential. That awareness on your own self is key to this Sthitapragya Lakshan. And believe me, it is key in every aspect of our life as well. Understand when your mind is wavering. And if it is wavering and it is not bothering you, allow it to waver. Give that independence to your manaha, because manaha is also independent, but it is dependent on you. And hence, you define the situation under which your mind should work for you. Other than that, let it go where it likes. And Sthita Prajna, when the Prajna is fully in its awareness, is Sthitham, it will immediately know when the mind moves and it can pull it back because it needs that control. Otherwise, it can let it go. That control will be there, and hence being able to withdraw becomes possible. For a turtle, if in case it doesn't sense the danger, then it will not pull it back. Right? That such feeling, the sense of danger happens when you are in full awareness of the situation. And that is all about your own self. And again, we use the comparison. Bhagavan did not say sada samharate. He is withdrawn at all times. That is not what Bhagavan has said. He is free to extend and free to retract. This is mastery. It is developing that mastery in your own self, having a total control and realization to the situation, which also includes that you understand this manaha is swatantraha with the dependence on you for its existence itself. When you understand this, then you can always bring the manaha back. That is the main way that we look at it. And it is not like we are saying the other schools are wrong. In several places you can find, even in the online things that I have heard few of them, where it is seen from the other point of view. As an exercise it is seen. But what I wanted to emphasize is we look at it a little different. And we are not negating, or we are not saying the other definition is misleading or wrong. We are only saying that it may mean the same, but from the kind of nishtha that we have towards Bhagavan, we say that, hey, this could be the way that the definition has flown. Because Bhagavan is Bhagavan. Both has its own ground. When seen as a voluntary withdrawal, the tasya represents a moksha. When seen as control, it represents the Sthitapragya. That is the basic difference between the two. And we can take both instead of taking one over the other, with a clarity of why they are doing it. And with that objective, we take the information from both. And again, we have to process it, and our intelligence can lead us to a third revelation also, which you can share with me, and I will be happy to learn and grow. Why turtle as an example? We attribute this to how a decision to withdraw the senses from an object of interest happens. It does not consult. Look at the appropriateness. Oh man, I'm sitting here. Is it okay to do? Others, what will they think of it? These kind of things, it doesn't think about appropriateness in relation to others. It withdraws naturally and without any expressed effort. There is no yajna, there is no mantra, no thought or contemplation. It is just a natural behavior. It will develop into you, right? When this prajna and your awareness about your own indriyas and your manaha comes into the picture, it will very naturally happen. It is only when you do not have the prajna, when you do not have the awareness and oversight over your own manaha, that this will slip. When you are in full awareness, it will not happen. There is nothing else is needed. Then vasana kshayam. To this, we introduce this term. Withdrawing the senses can seem like voluntary. Therefore, it is contrary to spontaneity. Okay, again, these are all your tarka that comes into picture. Somebody may come and say that, hey, wait a minute, you are saying withdraw. That in itself is a voluntary action. Therefore, it is not spontaneous. It is, what do you say? It is not a, it is effort based, is something that some can come and put an argument. So we just try to look at it. So vasana kshayam is what we introduce here. Kurmonganiva is a classic example that establishes that for a jnani, the voluntary and spontaneous are no longer opposed. They become one, because the ego that drives the compulsion in you is gone. That I is not projecting anymore. What remains is purely an intelligent responsiveness. In the intelligence, we say, the best example that I have read later is a Zen story. So what happens is, it will be a Buddhist monastery where they will be also teaching the martial arts. We know that, right? We have seen that in Shaolin Temple or other places, right? So in this monastery, they are teaching to fight with the stick. The student could never hit his master, and he is very disturbed about it. And he says, somehow I have to hit my master. Once master will be in closing his eyes and sitting in meditation, and the student becomes mischievous and says, okay, I am going to take this opportunity to go and strike master. What is, he strikes the master, and master just puts his hand and stops the strike. So the student asks, how is it possible? So master says, because your thought came before your action. You first thought that I will hit, and then you hit me. And because of that, I was able to stop. The intelligent responsiveness being only thing that remains basically refers to this level of conscious awareness, where consciousness is the only thing in its awareness. No, it is so difficult, it is all those things. Actually, it is not. Actually, it is not. It is a very natural thing that happens in us. What is unnatural is seeming like natural thing happens in us, which is getting attracted. That is what we feel is a natural thing. But when you start looking into it, just exploring and understanding and developing that in your brain or buddhi, it will slowly sink into you, and then you will see the difference. And as soon as you see the difference, your ability to be fully aware starts growing. It is that simple. But the problem is to be able to develop that patience, to be able to look into ourselves and compulsions around us as well. And that is what is called as samsara bandham. The remedy is, it is like both ways. This is going to keep you tight, and this is going to try and liberate you. And it is going to be a fight that is going to happen in your mind. At one point, it will break. And then it will settle down into that freedom. And this is nothing like those who are in the path of spiritual path, it happens, etc. If you are born as a human with the human vivekam, it will happen to you. It can happen at the age of 90, it can happen at the age of 9, or it can happen at the age of 5. That is immaterial, but it will definitely happen. Acharya's view, this verse serves another purpose, to protect the students from a dangerous understanding. After 56 and 57, Madhyama and Adhama Adhikari, the students who are considered to be on the lower and the middle category, they can conclude that the realized person can freely enjoy everything. Freedom does not mean sensory indulgence. Indulgence implies dependence and bondage. Not being vulnerable is the core characteristic of a jnani, and this shloka emphasizes that, establishes that. Acharya not only establishes both kinds of thought, he also introduces the concept of one being unable to, as in sick or being bedridden, versus one in control, to introduce the next shloka. Let us see how Acharya puts it. Just as a tortoise pulls back all its limbs from danger, so too, when a spiritual seeker, yati is the word that he has used, right? Yada samharate sanyag upasamharate cha ayam jnana nishtayam pravruttau yatihi. That yati is the word that he has used here. Firmly committed to self-knowledge, withdraws his senses completely from sense objects, then his wisdom becomes steady. His prajna becomes pratishtita. The pratishthit is the thing which will happen at that time. The tortoise represents a complete control, not partial, but all the limbs. It's a complete, total control, withdrawn at will when needed. Similarly, the Sthitapragya is not tempted or swayed by external sensory inputs. He does not suppress, but naturally and consciously withdraws, because his attention is inward in the self. Further, he says, in this context, it is said, even if a sick or incapacitated person, aturasya, does not engage with sense objects, vishayan anaharatha, external influences or engagements, and even if his senses withdraw like a tortoise limbs, that does not mean he is free of desire. That raga is still there in him. His senses may not be functioning, or he may lack the energy to indulge, while longing for enjoyment may still remain internally. Therefore, Krishna asks, how is the raga for sense objects gets fully or truly withdrawn? That is the key point that he establishes. Not just sensory withdrawal, but desires in you being transcended. And that answer is given in the next verse, which is 2.59. Though sense objects fall away from the abstinent, the taste for them remains, but it disappears when the Supreme is seen. Another very beautiful shloka where we will see this aspect. Like, if I give an example of the cricket bat, and mom takes it and puts it on the top somewhere, she hides it and says, finish the exam first. I put my full effort on the exam, but always thinking about the cricket bat which has been hidden by mom. And after the exam is over, the first thing that I go is towards that cricket bat. So though it has been taken away, the mind was continuously on that particular object only. That is the thing that he will be clarifying in the next shloka. So the shloka number 259, and we will take a break here today, going into Q&As, and get back to the shloka number 59 in our next class. Hari Bhaiya, Jai Siya Ram, welcome.
Jai Sri Ram, Guruji.
How was your trip?
Well, it's a little bit hectic, but it is good. Thank you, Guruji.
Well, I think Ravi is also joining your experience of getting into some new factories and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's been crazy in life. Yeah,
absolutely. Well,
I just joined a little bit late, but I understood some of the examples you have been providing on the turtle. I have maybe a relative question. When let's say turtle have reacted in a way that okay, there is some food in front or something, how would that react versus then how a fearness happens and how would that react, right? So you're saying the thought, awareness, and action, right? So it is doing an action first, or it is doing a thought and then action?
so that is the place where I had introduced that example, that story of
Yes.
the Zen.
Gotcha.
When we have one following the other, then you are not in the Lakshan of a Sthitapragya.
Okay.
It becomes natural. In other words, some of the documentaries may show that as soon as a food is put, it puts its head out, right? Or something like that, as though it is a stimuli which has been induced into the tortoise by the food. But the fact is, it is not a reaction to the food. It is a natural expression of reaching or not reaching. It is not afraid that it may be a kind of a net to catch me. That is not the kind of fear that is prohibiting. And also, it is not the greed to acquire the food I am coming out. It is natural. Similarly, going inwards is also natural. It is not reactive to a situation, and reactive to a situation is an observer's way of looking at it. But in the sense of tortoise, it is a natural expression. There is no difference between the thinking and the action. It naturally happens. And it has to have, right? Even if in case it is a jnani, he has to eat food. So he has to get attracted to the food. But it will not be a thing that leads to an action. It is not going to be a logical, krama-based thing. We are so much taught in terms of this kramam, logic. This leads to this, this leads to this. This computing way of looking our life has basically made us very weak, at least from the Sthitapragya Lakshan point of view, from the moksha point of view. And in fact, it is even a weakness in the leadership.
Yeah.
It is a great strength to be able to analyze. And an analysis is a step, but I am going to be natural. If I have come up to this particular position, it is because of some of the qualities which has enabled me to be qualified for this position. So I'm not afraid of this particular position anymore. I have to be natural, because when I was natural, I gained this position. When I became aware, I became weak. We say this even for the players, right? In some of the I forgot the training that they go through in the players, like, they say the same thing. You have come here because of what you did. It is not for what you're going to do. It is not like what you have to establish yourself as. You are natural, and be natural in your game is the thing that, what do you say, from a meditation or mindfulness, etc. That is something that they often speak to the players. And the reason why they go down in their form is because they start having the fear, or they start having the feeling that I am this, so I must be this. This I am this, I must be this is the cause of the problem. I was thinking of responding to the question that I was supposed to have continued the last class, and I told you we will continue later. Incidentally, your question is also leading to the same answer.
It is connecting,
Anxiety
yes.
and everything happens when this follows. And why this follows is because, having repeated it over and over again, the cause and effect and cause and effect and cause and effect, our mind thinks that life is also cause and effect. When you overcome that, when you break it, when you realize that life is not cause and effect, life is living its fullness, and with absolute awareness. When you get to that point, your anxiety automatically vanishes. Right. So that is another thing that is an answer to the earlier question as well.
Thank you, Guruji. That was actually excellent, because always we think about where you are, where you want to be, where you must, or you think about where you will go, right? And
Yep,
then
absolutely.
you will forget about the life's fulfillment. Always circle around the cause and effect thinking, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's challenging. Yeah, thank you,
Yeah.
Guruji.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Your question is not yet fully answered. I do have other points also, but I'm going to keep it for few of the,
Like it,
answers
Guruji.
for the
Yes,
following weeks as well, because it should be a journey. So today's
yes.
response, as well as the last response, to say that do not condemn the Rajasic gun in you, was the response that was given the first
Yeah.
answer. The second answer is from this: become natural. Right. The third one will come when we get in our next class.
Okay, Guruji.
And
Thank you.
my sincere apologies to Prabha. Prabha, I should have responded to you, or I should have sent a note to you to say that our times have changed. So now our 6:30 is your 7. So I forgot to send this alert to you, and I realized it when we started the class. I said, oh man, the time has changed. I should have sent out the WhatsApp message to Prabha. I forgot. So my apologies to you.
No problem, absolutely. I'll
Yeah.
catch up on the YouTube this week.
Definitely. And this class was, as I said, particularly the 57th Shloka is something that I was talking about during the last class also. So do definitely listen to it. And if you have any questions, always feel free to shoot it. Shrikant Bhaiya?
Guruji, good evening. Again, this is another great session that we were part of. It's so incidental, and I'll just share a very quick snippet of what's happening in our lives. As you know, Shreya saying, I've had a Bhagavad Gita book in my possession for the last probably year or so. Just never had a chance to open it. It had that the plastic wrap that it comes in. Never opened it. After our first class, I just happened to, Ramani and I were talking, and she said, hey, you got that book. Why don't you go open that book? I opened that. It's a 2-volume series, two different books. I just picked one, opened the page, and it landed on the exact 256. You wouldn't believe, and
Wow.
I'm having goosebumps right now as even I'm saying this to you, but this is what happened. So well, you could read whatever you want to into it, but I was really overwhelmed by how it happened, and the I could have gone into any page out
Correct.
of 1,000 pages, right? But it happened to be that same very verse that we just talked about. So that I just wanted
Wow.
to share that with you.
Yeah, Bhagwan's blessings, I should say. That's beautiful.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Now, with regards to today's class, I've got a question. It's interesting, right? So, and again, I feel relevance to everything that you have talked about today. And I think bringing the turtle as an example for the Panchendriyas to be aware of what's happening and be able to withdraw as and when you see your mind diverting or leaving, the right context, if you would, right? So I understand that. But if you're looking inwards, because I think that's what you indicated, that if you're looking because Jnani is looking inwards, all of these should you shouldn't even be thinking about it. Should happen automatically because you're not thinking outward, right? And if that is so, is it not right for a person to have a dream, a desire of anything? Is that improper? Uh, Again,
Beautiful.
I don't know, right? Because on the same side, you also say that this does not mean that you give up everything in life and become a sannyasi or whatever, right? So I realize you said that, but I'm conflicted by the thought of how is it that one can not be a sannyasi and yet live their life with purpose and still become a jnani, hopefully at the end of the day, and achieve
I
moksha.
totally understand your question. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And the answer lies in your own question, as a matter of fact. First and foremost thing is looking inwards is also not prajna. Prajna is awareness. It is not looking inwards. Looking inwards is a voluntary action that we do as part of upasana, like a meditation kind of a stuff. But more important is like dreaming about something or other aspects? Is it like we should not have it? It will not happen in you. And conflicting with let it be there. That is a very beautiful question in this at this point. The answer to that is we need to differentiate between the prakriti amsam and the purusha amsam, the atma amsam and the anatma amsam. The manam, buddhi, the indriyas, all are part of Prakriti's amsam. These dreamings that happen, the kind of wild thought that comes, is the dharma of the manaha. It will happen, it should happen. But at the same time, when I need it. So the fourth element comes into picture here, which is the ahankara. Chittam, manam, buddhi, ahankara are the four sukshma sharira that we talk about. The ahankara is the association of the self with a specific experience. That association of the self is the one which will get liberated. In other words, when the manaha is independently roaming around, you will be having the atma kirida, which is like enjoying, witnessing your own, what do you say, silly movements of the mind, of the buddhi, and all those stuff. You are just witnessing. But when you are going to be focused on something, you will ask the manaha and buddhi to come and support, and they will come and support you purely for that particular purpose. That is the sankalpa, whatever you have taken. And once that is done, the manaha knows that you will let the manaha go and enjoy. It will take your ashraya and enjoy its own self. Let it, because that enjoyment is the nature of the prakriti. It is not enjoyment. That wandering is the nature of the prakriti, which we call it as enjoyment. It becomes an enjoyment when I put a ahankaram into that. That ahankara buddhi is going to be separated, and I will be not influenced by the manaha, but I will have an absolute influence over the manaha when I need it. That would be the big difference between the two. So those thought will arise in the mind of its own accord. That is mind's thought, and you will not associate yourself with it. So it will not become my thought. It will not become something that I get attracted to. And subsequently, when I want something, then manaha will cooperate. This relationship that we develop between the manaha and I is what the upasanas are all about. Did it answer your question, sir?
Yes, it did. And I think It's being conscious. I guess it's being conscious about not getting associated, as you said in the step 2, step 3, and to, as you said, right? So have the manaha look at the body and the actions and say, just like you said, and laugh about it. This is what you're doing, and I'm obviously seeing you, but again, still express that restraint to withdraw and come back to your senses, I guess.
Correct. And again, in all these expressions, we are limited by the limitations of the words, right?
Mhm.
I understand the intent that you are communicating, but that is the only way it can be communicated. It may seem like a voluntary action for me to withdraw from the manaha. I'm not even withdrawing. I'm just being myself and I'm just witnessing the manaha. At the same time, when I need the manaha for specific sankalpas, because I'm a karta, that one will naturally come and serve me and then go back to its own self. Right. So, and again, nothing is forced. It is naturally happening. That is the key here. That is the example. The Kurmonganiva comes into picture. To both of you and also to Hari Bhaiya, the day before I completed the 18th chapter for Bhagavad Gita for Shreya. So definitely feeling good about it, and will continue my prayers as well. I'll have her in the mind. We'll be performing again the Bhagavad Gita in Ravi Bhaiya's uncle's place where his uncle passed away. Right. So his name is Pandit Ram Lagan. And even then, even there, I'll definitely have you and his blessings as well be given to Shreya. And I'm sure it is all towards their Sadgati and to be with God after having fulfilled their purpose in this world.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Guruji. Appreciate it.
Well, I will take leave here today and we will get back the next week on Wednesday. Harihi Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat.